Hello, my name is Ashley Woods, and I am with the Set the Standard consulting team. My teammates Jennifer, Jessica, Donald, and I prepared this presentation to give you some information about the General Motors Company, their history, ways we feel they are setting the standard today, and some recommendations we have for the company's future business practices and growth. The first things we wanted to discuss are some important information about GM's history and background. Next, we will share some information about their operations and products and services. We also feel their current environmental practices and goals regarding energy conservation are quite significant. Then we will go into some of the company's controversies and our recommendations about what we feel the company could improve upon. I'd like to begin by discussing some of the company's background. GM is one of the largest full-line vehicle manufacturers and marketers. The company has four business segments: GM North America, GM Europe, GM International Operations, and GM South America. It has several brands which include Chevrolet, GMC, Buick, and Cadillac. After emerging from Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 2009, the former GM company was split into two companies, General Motors and Motors Liquidation for leftover assets. One of the wonderful things about the company is that GM is currently ranked 8th on the Fortune 500 and 20th on Fortune Global 500. Now that I've talked about the company's background, I'd like to talk in more detail about the company's history as well. General Motors Company was founded in 1908 by William C. Durant. Just a few years later, GM introduced the electric self-starter commercially in its 1912 Cadillac, which soon after rendered the hand crank obsolete. In 1920, Durant was forced out of the company and was succeeded quite successfully by Alfred P. Sloan, Jr. Under Alfred Sloan's leadership, GM's sales organization strengthened. They pioneered annual style changes in car models and introduced innovations in consumer financing. By 1929, General Motors had surpassed the Ford Company to become the leading American passenger car manufacturer. In 1931, GM became the world's largest manufacturer of motor vehicles. A decade later, in 1941, GM accounted for 44% of all U.S. automotive sales, compared with 12% 2 decades prior in 1921. As the American economy grew in the 1950s and 1960s, General Motors also grew and continued to hold 40 to 45% of U.S. sales. In the 1970s and 1980s, GM did face some competition from Japanese automakers. At this time, GM began a new automotive division, Saturn, that used highly automated plants to produce subcompact vehicles to compete with the Japanese competition. GM then recovered from these challenges and was able to return to its automotive business. Now that we have discussed some of the most memorable aspects of GM's history, let's talk about the company's operations. General Motors is headquartered in Detroit, Michigan, and employs approximately 225,000 people. GM has more than 170 manufacturing facilities and an expansive network of more than 20,000 dealerships. GM is currently meeting the needs of their customers through their 10 district brands in more than 140 countries. GM delivered an impressive 9.8 million in retail sales and 5.9 million wholesale units in 2015. Next, we would like to speak a bit more about GM's products and services. GM is a major automobile manufacturer that designs, builds, and sells cars, trucks, and automobile parts. GM designed the incredibly popular crash test dummies that remain the global standard for frontal crash testing. GM was also the very first North American auto manufacturer to build a rollover test facility. GM has more than 2016 models with a 5-star overall vehicle score than any other manufacturer selling in the US. It is evident that GM has set some very high standards when it comes to their production. Now that we've discussed their products and services, we would like to share some information about their environmental practices as well. In 2017, GM won the EPA Energy Star Sustained Excellence Award for their leadership in environmental protection through energy efficiency. GM saved $73 million in energy costs in 2016 and avoided 388,000 metric tons of carbon emissions. By the year of 2050, it is GM's goal to use only renewable energy resources. In 2016, GM added 23 new facilities that are landfill-free. They also lessened their total waste by 27% by the year 2010. Each of GM's manufacturing plants conducted an environmental outreach activity in 2016. Although GM has made incredible strides with company and environmental achievement, they have not been without their fair share of controversy. GM has not always been known for supporting environmental initiatives. In 2008, a former GM executive, Bob Lutz, was criticized for calling climate change a hoax and was against implementing environmental initiatives in the company. While GM changed their stance on climate change, they did not pull funding from organizations like the Heartland Institute that actively attacked climate change until 2012. There were also concerns regarding GM's quality control practices. In 2014, more than 2.6 million GM vehicles were recalled for ignition switch defects. These defects prevented airbags deploying and caused a vehicle's engine to turn off while being driven. This problem was discovered as early as 2005 in the Chevy Cobalt, but the defect was not properly addressed until nearly a decade later, partially because the problem would be too costly to fix. Our team has created some recommendations from some of the controversy GM has experienced over the years. In regards to environmental issues, we would recommend that GM assess their leadership in terms of how they would like the company to be represented. Clean energy and energy efficiency will be extremely important to the future growth of the company. We recommend that any executives that speak for the company must represent the company's core values. Executives that deliver messages contrary to what the company stands for puts the company's reputation at risk. We recommend that GM continue to raise the bar and improve to remain ahead of competitors in energy efficiency. For quality control, it is our recommendation to the company to never put the safety of the consumer at risk when there is a known defect. Defects should be addressed and recalled as soon as they are discovered. Quality control methods should be put into place to prevent defects like this from ever making it to the consumer. We urge GM to keep the consumer safety a top priority. In conclusion, General Motors has come an extremely long way since it was founded in 1908. Growth has been exponential for the company as they are always looking to adopt the most innovative practices. GM has had its fair share of challenges, but has persevered and aimed to do better in both performance and converting to renewable energy resources. GM has set a very high performance standard and remains one of the top automobile manufacturers in the United States and in the world. This